It's November the 27th, 2021. Uh, Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. But apparently, something else happened over Thanksgiving that wasn't quite as good, and that is the emergence of a new COVID variant, which is being called Omicron or Omicron, depending on your pronunciation preference. Some say Uranus, some say Uranus, so whichever you want. At any rate, this new Greek lettered variant apparently had the market all of Twitter yesterday, and the political establishment as well. Biden put a travel ban in on South Africa and several other neighboring areas in Africa, and to see if we can stop the spread. And there's concern that it might be even more infectious than the previous one, which is kind of interesting when you think about when the original strains of COVID came out. Everybody's going, these are just incredibly infectious. I mean, they're so infectious. So, I mean, everybody was running around, cleaning surfaces and all sort of stuff, right? And then it turned out it was actually airborne. So, okay. And then the Delta variant came out. And, that is really, really infectious, very infectious. And it caused another surge and so forth. And now this one is, even more infectious. I mean, I'm just wondering how much more infectious can a disease be? I mean, isn't there a certain, I don't know. But at any rate, it's supposed to be potentially worse, and it's being studied right now by the appropriate scientists, and I guess they'll have a better idea soon. I guess the real issue is how effective the existing vaccines are against it and how effective treatments such as monoclonal antibodies are against it that have been developed for the previous strains. So at any rate, we'll have to see how that happens. I know that already the governor of New York was using it as a rationale to declare a state of emergency, even though I don't think any has even been detected in the country yet. So, but it will get here, I'm sure. With our open borders policy, how could it not get here? All right. So anyway, if you like these videos, please subscribe and give me a like, and we'll see if we can get these out to more people. So at any rate, we're looking at the situation prior to this and prior to the Thanksgiving holiday. There have been an uptick in the COVID strains a bit in the past few weeks. The average kind of was somewhere in the mid 75,000 range for cases per day. It was approaching 100,000, somewhat under 100,000 a day before this all happened. Of course, right now it's falling off because of lack of reporting during the holiday period, and there'll be some big up days next week as they catch up with unreported cases that were happening during the holiday. But don't take that too seriously. It'll take about a week for the numbers to settle out so you have any idea what's really going on there. So at any rate, that's kind of the situation. We'll have to see whether this really turns into something big or not. Since there's so many people in the country that have been vaccinated, and so many people who actually had the virus already and recovered from it, I would think there's a fair amount of immunity there, but we'll see, exactly what this new strain does. It's a little early to predict, but I do think that there's going to be an attempt by the known people to try to use this as a power grab again. I mean, they really want to keep everybody under their thumb and making them do things they want them to do. It's kind of it's kind of a conditioning thing, I guess. It occurred to me that a long time ago when I was involved in a drill team effort when I was in college years ago, at where the Army does things and so forth, and this was it's sort of a ROTC related group, I guess you'd call it. And anyhow, but I noticed that one reason why I think the military likes drill is because eventually, by putting people through drill and basic training to some degree, you get people used to immediately obeying any order you're given by a superior officer, or so to speak. It conditions you to obey immediately, not to think about it. Which I'm not that's what the military needs, but I'm just saying I think in some ways this is sort of what our political leadership is trying to do to the population, perhaps. By continuing to say you must wear a mask, or you must do this, you must do that. And I think there's a little bit of that going on here. kind of to condition the entire civilian population to get used to obeying orders, so to speak. At any rate, just a thought that kind of crossed my mind there, a little brain static or whatever. But it does seem to me that that you kind of get the drift of what's coming. I don't know. I mean, there's been an ongoing battle about the vaccines and so forth. And in fact, I'm a little bit up in the air about this whole thing about the boosters and so forth. I mean, for instance, I have a friend I talked to, two people I can think of, and this is a really great sample set, right? Let's base it on that. But one person got the booster shot with no negative effects whatsoever. Another person had the two original shots with no negative effects and got a booster and was laid up for a day. So So I guess, and we kind of know what happened, that the governor of California got his, and he wasn't seen for about 10 days. So apparently he had an even more serious reaction to it, in my opinion. I think the idea that it was all personal problems, I tend to think is not the case. But this is one of the deals that you get into with this. I've seen some studies on it which seem to show, though, that although there are cases where people have gotten vaccinated and developed some kind of a condition, and with serious illness, and even in a few cases led to death. You're talking about, nearly 200 million domestic vaccinated people, So, I mean, out of that, if there's any kind of negative effect at all, at some point, certain things will show up, I think. But I saw a study on this where they actually compared large groups of those who had the vaccines and health actually, we're just looking literally at death in this case, but okay. And then in other case was those who didn't get the vaccine, and then they took any deaths due to COVID out of through those samples out, which is a relatively small percentage still, but they were removed. So COVID death wasn't counted. And looking at other causes of death, other than COVID, it turned out that really the vaccinated group had a lower death rate than the unvaccinated group did. And the general reasoning that the study come up with on it was that effectively the reason it was different was that basically the people that had the vaccine were generally also doing other medical measures that doctors would recommend, getting regular checkups, taking the prescriptions, and whatever it is that health, look more interested in maintenance of health, careful about it, where the other group was less focused on that, and therefore other things were actually causing them problems, heart conditions or whatever. So at any rate, I thought that was an interesting study, which kind of shows that if there is some really adverse effect, it's really not detectable at a macro level. But certainly these after reaction shots on the first or second dose or during the booster and all, those are real and do happen to a certain percent of public. I'm a little surprised, though, that it's considered to be such a big thing. I mean, because people have had complaints about this with flu shots for years, too, for instance. So, but anyhow, I just thought I'd mention that. So I guess we'll have to be prepared for the for whatever they come up with next. Hopefully, the early indications seem to be that, and this is probably fragmentary, and therefore don't take this with a grain of salt. But this new version, while maybe more infectious, probably isn't any more dangerous in terms of health consequences than the previous variants. I mean, Delta turned out that way as well, as we'll recall. I mean, it apparently was a bit more infectious, but by that time there were so many people that had vaccines or had actually acquired natural immunity. And one of my beefs on the whole thing is I'm having a hard time getting a hold of any numbers, and I've been doing a little bit of looking around on the internet for this, of what level of antibodies is considered to be a reasonable level of immunity based on vaccination, and therefore when natural immunity reaches that same level, one would tend to think it's just as good. And this is a very hard number to come up with. And anyhow, that's kind of my kind of little mini report on the current pandemic, which is really becoming more of an endemic disease than a pandemic. I mean, it's worldwide, And the problem is, one would argue that, well, it'd be nice if we'd vaccinated the entire world, probably you wouldn't be seeing as many of these mutations, and that's probably true. However, the downside of it is it's simply impractical. There's over 7 billion people out there, and even if 6 of them are eligible, leaving out young children or whatever. I mean, the point is getting all these people in these underdeveloped countries vaccinated is going to be a gargantuan task, and the virus can mutate many times before that would ever be accomplished in any kind of scenario you could come up with. So, at any rate, I think we're stuck with this thing for a while. Unfortunately, I think it's kind of like we had flu season, and now we're going to have this thing. I mean, but so at any rate, and well, that's kind of it for now. I guess we'll get on with other topics. I guess next week the Congress will get back to working on all those big spending bills and tax bills, and we'll just have to see what happens to us on those. I understand the latest thing is Manchin is now calling for the reversal of the position on the Keystone pipeline, which is kind of interesting. Is this going to be a condition to vote for the bill or what? I don't know. We'll see what happens on that. The battle rages on, and Pelosi did get her bill through the House. We know that. I was a little surprised that the way that happened. In one sense, that these people made a big deal about the scoring of the Congressional Budget Office. The Congressional Budget Office came back and showed it wasn't paid for, and then they went ahead and voted for it anyhow, which is kind of interesting, except for one guy from Maine. And his beef wasn't opposition to the bill as such. He didn't like the tax break for some upper income people in high tax states due to the restoration of a higher state and local tax deduction. So anyhow, so there it is for this week. Until next week, we'll try to keep you informed as things happen. And links to my social media account are below. Particularly, I do post fairly frequently on Twitter and occasionally on Gab and Parler. Although most of those are just links to these videos. But occasionally I'll post something there too if I get really ambitious and copy what I'm posting on those as well. So until next time.